What if the world's most formidable fortress could be erased before those inside even realized they were under attack? Imagine a shield so robust, so layered in technological marvel, that it became an article of faith among allies and adversaries alike, a bulwark against disaster, a monument to deterrence. Yet, history has shown that faith in invulnerability is often the first casualty of innovation. In the waning months of the year 2025, Russia executed a breathtaking pinpoint assault on the Aegis Ashore missile defense site near Odessa. This was no ordinary facility. It represented the pinnacle of Western engineering, a monument to deterrence, and was considered nearly untouchable by any adversary. Its foundations, both literal and symbolic, had been laid over decades of tension, hard-fought treaties, and an arms race that spanned generations. For years, defense analysts cited Odessa as the West's ultimate bulwark against Eastern aggression. Decades of innovation, countless expert minds, and tens of billions of dollars had forged a shield believed to be insurmountable. On its survival rested the security calculations of millions and the strategic postures of entire nations. Comparisons were frequently drawn to other iconic fortresses in history: the Maginot Line, the Great Wall of China, and the fortresses of Verdun. Each was hailed as impregnable. Each ultimately fell to new tactics or technologies. Yet in less than a quarter of an hour, that shield was turned to dust. The world stared in disbelief as a single, synchronized blow obliterated the myth of impenetrability. The very foundations of military deterrence and technological supremacy seemed to collapse in real time. It was as if the entire doctrine of static defense, cherished since the advent of nuclear arms, had been thrown into the ash heap of history in a matter of minutes. If assets this protected, fortified by overlapping barriers and enormous expenditure, can be dismantled in moments, then the core of global security is exposed. For armed forces, years of investment and planning might evaporate overnight. For leaders and citizens, the potential cost is even heavier: the destabilization of vast regions and the unraveling of hard-won peace. The world teetered on the edge of a new age, one where the old rules no longer applied, and the consequences of a single failure could cascade across continents. How could such a breach, previously thought impossible, unfold so swiftly? To answer that, we must first understand what made the Odessa complex so vital, and why the world convinced itself it could never fall. The story of Odessa is not just the story of a military base. It is a cautionary tale of technological hubris and the ever-evolving nature of conflict. Before we can trace the operation itself, we need to look at how the Odessa installation came to symbolize Western confidence. Its history, location, and layered defenses all played a part in the myth of its invulnerability. To truly appreciate the magnitude of what happened, we must delve into the strategic logic, the political calculations, and the technological marvel that the fortress represented. Why did NATO treat the so-called citadel near Odessa as its southern shield, while Russia saw it as a loaded gun pointed at its heart? To grasp the true stakes, we must peer inside this fortress, a showcase of Western engineering, and, until late 2025, believed nearly invulnerable. The very existence of the citadel was a message, a declaration that the West would not be intimidated, that its frontiers were secured by the best minds and the deepest pockets. At the heart of the Aegis Ashore complex pulsed the AN-SPY-1 radar, a technological sentinel designed to detect Russian intercontinental ballistic missile launches at their most fragile, earliest stage. This single system fed critical targeting data into the missile defense architecture of the United States and its allies, threatening to upend decades of delicate strategic balance. It was more than a shield. It became the nervous system for intercepting any Russian retaliation during crisis. The radar's 4 massive phased array antennas could track hundreds of objects simultaneously, creating a digital map of the skies above Eastern Europe and beyond. But the Citadel's danger did not stop at defense. Its Mk-41 vertical launchers, officially stocked with SM-3 interceptors, could be rearmed in a matter of hours with Tomahawk cruise missiles. This gave the base a hair-trigger, offensive capacity that could threaten southern Russia within minutes. For Moscow, this was not simply about defense. It felt as if NATO had stationed both a shield and a sword mere miles from Russian territory. The dual-use nature of the launchers was no accident. It was a deliberate ambiguity, designed to keep adversaries guessing and to maintain strategic flexibility. The complex's dual-use capability and its proximity to vital Russian military and industrial sites, including the main base of the Black Sea Fleet, made its presence intolerable for Russia. Diplomacy had broken down. The ambiguity of the Citadel's role turned its existence into an existential, not just theoretical risk. The echoes of the Cuban Missile Crisis resounded in every Russian security briefing. How could any nation tolerate a rival's sword at its throat? NATO spared no expense in fortifying the outpost. Norwegian surface-to-air missile batteries guarded the skies from afar. German Iris-T systems and small teams with portable launchers patrolled the inner perimeter. Dozens of anti-drone measures, from signal jammers to directed energy weapons, layered the facility. Below ground, a deeply buried command bunker connected old defenses, sheltering officers ready for any scenario. The Citadel's designers drew lessons from the sieges of Leningrad, the defense of Bastogne, and the bunkers of Norad, weaving them into a tapestry of steel, sensors, and secrecy. To the Western Alliance, this fortress was the keystone of its southern missile shield. Its destruction would tear a gaping hole in NATO's defense, leaving entire nations exposed to strikes. Billions had been spent, but more than money was at risk. Credibility itself hung in the balance. The fate of cities from Bucharest to Berlin, from Athens to Ankara, was woven into the continued existence of the Citadel. Yet, beneath its layers of power and protection, a hidden flaw endured. The Citadel's defenses were built on assumptions forged in the last century. They were designed for fleets of bombers and slow cruise missiles, not for the new wave of electronic warfare, swarming drones, and hypersonic weapons now rolling out of Russian factories. The base's blueprints, while cutting-edge for their time, had become relics almost overnight in the face of a rapidly changing threat landscape. What appeared unbreakable would soon be tested by an adversary who saw not only the fortress's strengths, but also its fatal vulnerabilities. The lesson of the French Maginot Line, a wall that German forces simply bypassed with speed and surprise, hung over every war game, yet was too often dismissed as irrelevant to the digital age. History, it seemed, was about to repeat itself in a new key. As autumn 2025 drew to a close, Russia prepared to challenge the Citadel's reputation for invulnerability. What followed would rewrite the playbook for modern warfare. The operation was codenamed Operation Glass Veil, a nod to the strategy of rendering the invisible visible and the seemingly solid fragile. How do you topple a fortress engineered to withstand everything short of the apocalypse? Russian planners were acutely aware that a direct assault, a replay of the brutal sieges of Stalingrad or Aleppo, would be doomed. Instead, they looked to examples of asymmetric warfare. The Israeli destruction of Egypt's Bar Lev line using water cannons in 1973, or the cyber attacks that paralyzed Estonia in 2007. Innovation, not brute force, would be the key. For months, Russian military intelligence orchestrated a silent siege. Every inch of the citadel near Odessa became the subject of relentless scrutiny. Satellites lingered overhead, signals were intercepted, and a clandestine network of operatives noted every routine and anomaly on the ground. Fences, antennas, maintenance logs, each detail mapped, each pattern transformed into a vulnerability. The intelligence effort mirrored the exhaustive preparations for the D-Day landings in 1944, where success depended as much on knowing the enemy's routines as on the firepower marshaled for the attack. The analysis was sobering. The Citadel's formidable armor masked fatal weaknesses. At its core, command and control were dangerously centralized. A single subterranean node funneled every decision, every order. The entire complex depended on one primary radar and a handful of vital communication arrays. If those failed, defenders would be blinded and mute, cut off from each other and the outside world. This centralization, intended to ensure unity of action, instead created a single point of catastrophic failure. But the most insidious flaw was not structural, it was doctrinal. NATO's designers had imagined yesterday's threats: cruise missiles, bombers, sabotage teams. The fortress bristled with counters to conventional attack, but the battlefield had shifted. The Citadel's garrison trained for the last war, not the one about to erupt. This is a mistake as old as warfare itself. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, for instance, invested vast sums in fortresses that were rendered obsolete by mobile artillery and new tactics in the First World War. Russian planners conceived a new kind of assault, a campaign not of brute force, but of systematic unmaking. Step 1. Waves of advanced electronic warfare would scramble sensors and jam all communications, sowing chaos and leaving operators isolated, guessing at ghosts. Step 2. Swarms of autonomous drones would descend, overwhelming anti-aircraft and anti-drone systems with unpredictable maneuvers and sheer numbers. As defenders faltered, the final blow would come. Batteries of hypersonic missiles, moving too fast to intercept, would slice into the heart of the Citadel, its command center and radar station. For the Kremlin, it was a gamble of the highest order. Failure would lay bare Russia's deepest technological secrets for the world to dissect, risking retaliation and humiliation. But for NATO, the consequences ran deeper. If the Citadel fell, an entire generation's faith in static, high-tech defense would crumble, and with it, the certainty that billions spent on fortress walls could guarantee security. The stakes were nothing less than the global order itself. As the clock ticked down, every contingency was rehearsed, every variable measured. The moment of attack would not just determine the fate of a fortress. It would redraw the boundaries of modern warfare and force the world to confront its new vulnerabilities. War games in the Russian General Staff simulated dozens of possible responses, from immediate NATO retaliation to sudden cyber counterstrikes. The stakes had not been this high since the height of the Cold War. The night before the assault, tension inside the Citadel was electric, yet few sensed the true scale of what was coming. Outside, Russian forces waited for the signal that would change the balance of power. The final hours were eerily reminiscent of the calm before the German blitzkrieg in Poland, the defenders alert, yet utterly unprepared for the nature and speed of the onslaught that was about to shatter their world. Modern war often begins not with thunder, but with silence. In the pre-dawn hush, nothing seemed amiss, until the world's most advanced missile shield vanished in less than a quarter of an hour. The assault came in 3 relentless phases, each building upon the chaos of the last. The first was the blackout. Russian electronic warfare teams, fielding Krasuka 4 and Divnomori systems, unleashed a storm of electromagnetic interference. In an instant, every radar and communication line within the Aegis Ashore complex flickered out, eyes blinded, orders lost in the void. Defenders found themselves cut off, unable to call for help or even see what was coming. The confusion was total, the effect as paralyzing as the first use of radio jamming in the Second World War, when British bombers suddenly lost all contact with home. Next, the invisible hunters descended. 48 autonomous Lancet drones, each driven by cutting-edge artificial intelligence, swept in from all sides. They hunted air defense radars and missile launchers with clinical precision. The drones' decentralized swarm logic meant that losing a few did not matter. The rest simply adapted, learning from each other, slipping past countermeasures. The fortress's much-touted anti-drone guns and interceptors were quickly overwhelmed and silenced. This tactic drew inspiration from nature, the way flocks of birds or schools of fish evade predators through unpredictable collective motion. With the shield blinded and battered, the killing blow arrived. 3 Zircon hypersonic missiles, traveling at many times the speed of sound, sliced through the morning sky. In mere seconds, they found their marks, the radar nerve center and the deeply buried command bunker. The detonations were absolute, shattering concrete and steel in instant, total destruction. No alarm sounded, no interceptors launched, no one escaped. The entire annihilation was over in under 15 minutes. The world watched, transfixed, as the most advanced defensive complex ever built fell to a choreography of technology that seemed almost science fiction. As the dust settled, Russian forces moved swiftly to confirm the kill. Satellites peered down from orbit, searching for signs of life. Radio intercepts scanned for stray transmissions, while infrared eyes hunted for any trace of lingering heat. The verdict was unanimous: total obliteration. Not a single vital system survived. The once impregnable missile shield was reduced to smoldering earth and silent ruins. The scene was reminiscent of the aftermath of Hiroshima, a site that had once teemed with activity, now an eerie, lifeless landscape. The consequences came swiftly and shook the world. NATO's southern missile shield, guardian of the Black Sea's western coast, ceased to exist in a single night. The balance of power in the region tilted sharply. Years of investment and billions of dollars vanished in less than one sunrise, while every moment of the assault carried the risk of sparking a wider war. One stray missile, one misread signal, could have triggered catastrophe. The world was suddenly reminded that the nuclear hair trigger, thought to be a relic of the past, was alive and well. Yet the true shockwave radiated far beyond the battlefield, reverberating through war rooms and strategy sessions across the planet. The lesson was clear. The old ways of war had been rendered obsolete in a single, stunning demonstration. Generals in Tokyo, Beijing, Washington, and Berlin convened emergency meetings to reassess their own vulnerabilities. Analysts compared the event to the destruction of the British fleet at Singapore in 1942, a single, unexpected blow that changed the course of the entire conflict. The world's military thinkers scrambled to understand what had just happened. The rules of war had changed before their eyes. In think tanks and universities, debates raged. Could any fixed installation now be truly safe? Was the era of the fortress over for good, or would new forms of defense emerge to fill the void? The shock was particularly acute in countries that had long relied on static defenses. Japan, Israel, and South Korea all began urgent reviews of their own missile shields. If the citadel could be reduced to rubble, what fortress anywhere is truly safe, and what comes after its fall? The question reverberated far beyond the military sphere, challenging policymakers, scientists, and ordinary citizens to rethink their assumptions about safety in a world where the pace of technological change outstrips the ability to defend against it. The destruction of the Aegis Ashore complex near Odessa in late 2025 did more than obliterate concrete and steel. It broke the spell of invincibility that had cocooned Western military strategy for generations. Investing billions into sprawling, fixed strongholds now seems as outdated as building stone castles after the advent of gunpowder. The verdict is unmistakable. The age of fortress warfare is over, and clinging to it courts disaster. Military historians drew direct parallels to the fate of the French Maginot Line, breached in a matter of days by German tanks and paratroopers. The victory at Odessa was not the triumph of a single superweapon. Instead, it was synergy. The ruthless choreography of electronic warfare, swarming drones, and hypersonic strikes. Russia's operation targeted every blind spot and exploited each procedural lag, unspooling the West's most advanced shield in mere minutes. No solitary technology could have managed this. Only the relentless coordination of multiple domains delivered such a swift defeat. This was the realization of the revolution in military affairs that strategists had debated for decades, now made terrifyingly real. This operation proved a new military doctrine: mobility over mass, dispersion over density, and rapid integrated actions over slow, layered defenses. The lesson is stark. Tomorrow's wars will not be won by building ever larger fortresses, but by fielding flexible, elusive forces in constant motion. Superiority will be measured not in the thickness of walls or the reach of radars, but in the ability to adapt and strike from unexpected directions. This echoes the lessons of guerrilla warfare, where small mobile units have repeatedly proven capable of defeating larger static forces. Russia's focus on high-tech, asymmetric tactics was vindicated on the battlefield, confronting NATO and its partners with hard truths. Decades of spending on legacy systems now appear dangerously obsolete. The psychological blow was as severe as the physical one. The West's confidence in its technological edge was shaken, and the illusion of enduring security along Russia's borders was shattered. The event became a case study in military academies worldwide, with students poring over every detail, searching for lessons that might prevent a similar disaster in their own countries. Those unwilling to adapt now gamble with more than budgets. They risk deterrence, lives, and the fate of nations. To lag in this new arms race is to invite catastrophic vulnerability when the next conflict erupts. For strategists and policymakers, this is a signal flare. The character of war has changed, and denial comes at an immeasurable cost. The collapse of the Citadel served as a modern parable, a warning that complacency and inertia are themselves fatal vulnerabilities. But what does this new era of warfare mean for those far from the war rooms and command bunkers? How does a single night's destruction ripple outward, reshaping societies, economies, and the very fabric of international relations? The answers are as sobering as they are urgent. The ripple effects of Odessa are already reaching beyond military circles, reshaping politics, economies, and the daily sense of security across continents. In a world where old certainties have crumbled overnight, everyone must confront the new realities of an age defined by unpredictability. World leaders hastily convened in emergency summits, stock markets swung wildly, and citizens found themselves wondering if their own cities might be vulnerable to the next silent, invisible attack. The world's balance of power has shifted, and your nation's place in it is no longer certain. The destruction of the Citadel has not only exposed the fragility of modern defense, but also upended alliances and emboldened rivals. Small nations, once reassured by the presence of Western missile shields, now scramble to develop their own autonomous drone fleets and cyber capabilities. The global arms market surges as countries from the Middle East to Southeast Asia race to acquire the next generation of offensive and defensive technologies. The obliteration of the Aegis Ashore complex near Odessa shattered decades of strategic assumptions. For years, governments poured billions into static fortresses, convinced that layers of concrete and circuitry could ensure safety. Yet, in a single devastating night, the seamless combination of electronic warfare, autonomous drones, and hypersonic missiles exposed how fragile those defenses truly were. This was not merely a battlefield loss, it was a global reckoning. The operation made it undeniable. No legacy system, however advanced, can withstand adversaries who innovate faster and strike unpredictably. What once seemed unbreakable has become a beacon for attack. The psychological impact cannot be overstated. Trust in established security guarantees is eroded, and debates erupt over whether alliances like NATO can adapt quickly enough. Complacency now spells danger. Every nation, every sector, must face a sobering truth. Failing to adapt to asymmetric high-tech threats brings not only squandered resources, but also the real possibility of irreparable security collapse and lost credibility. The cost of hesitation is measured in lives, power, and the fate of nations. Governments worldwide launch urgent reviews of their own critical infrastructure, from power grids to communication networks, seeking to root out the same flaws that doomed the Citadel. The lesson is stark. Survival hinges on mastering a new reality of conflict, not just by building higher walls, but by weaving together technology, autonomy, and intelligence at every layer. Those who cling to old doctrines risk being outpaced and exposed to disaster. Some nations respond with sweeping reforms, investing heavily in artificial intelligence, decentralized command structures, and rapid reaction forces. Others, mired in bureaucracy and tradition, fall further behind, their populations growing ever more anxious. This new era will show no mercy for the unprepared. The countdown has begun. Are you ready to question everything you believed about security? Will your nation rise to the challenge, embracing innovation and adaptability? Or will it cling to comforting myths until the moment of crisis arrives? The fate of cities, the stability of continents, and the peace of the world depend on the answer. The story of Odessa is not just a warning. It is a call to action, a demand that we all confront the uncomfortable truths of our time. History will judge those who heed its lessons and those who do not. Practical steps must now be taken. Defense ministries must audit all fixed installations for vulnerabilities to electronic warfare and drone swarms. Civilian infrastructure must be hardened against cyber infiltration. Military doctrine must shift toward decentralization and agility, with regular unscripted drills to test readiness against unconventional threats. International alliances must create rapid response teams capable of deploying electronic countermeasures and autonomous systems on short notice. Above all, a culture of adaptability and innovation must be nurtured at every level, from the general staff to the newest recruit, from the president's desk to the engineer's lab bench. Historical parallels abound, but the message is clear. The future belongs to those who learn fastest, adapt quickest, and never mistake yesterday's victories for tomorrow's security. The age of the fortress is over. The age of the swarm and the algorithm has begun. The only question that remains is, who will master it first?